I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. My friend Youssef and Jeannie is here, and a room full of other people talking about Martin Luther King holiday, celebrating that, and talking about the labor unions in our community, in our town, and what does the movement to equity mean for us these days. I'm pleased to have my friend Carrie Jo Felder here. Carrie, how are you? Is Carrie here yet?
Not yet, Al.
Not yet. Okay. Well, Yusuf, let's start with you, and we'll come back to introduce the other group when she's here. Yusuf, how are you doing? First of all,
very good. Thank you for asking.
Meditations, thoughts, impressions on Dr. King.
Well, I think the real test of time will be whether we are able to educate successive generations about the real contributions of Martin Luther King and not the sanitized version that gets dusted off and brought out of the closet once a year at about this time, Al.
Did you ever see Dr. King personally yourself, or talk to him, connect with him?
No, not one-on-one, but I have read many of his writings. Many people consider a piece he wrote on toilet paper that was originally considered Why We Can't Wait and later renamed The Letter from the Birmingham Jail as one of the most classic pieces of American literature in the past century. And it is worth reading and rereading and encouraging young children to read so that they can understand and appreciate the resilience of the participants in the civil rights struggle and the reality that the civil rights struggle did not just benefit Black people. The primary beneficiaries of the civil rights movement were white women, but it was intended to benefit humanity, and it did, because out of the civil rights struggle under Martin Luther King's leadership was the engine that pulled all of the other social justice movements out of the station of social injustice. The Gray Panthers, the Senior Citizens Movement, the American Indian Movement, the Yippies, the LGBTQ&A movement. All of those movements stand on the shoulders of the civil rights movement. Now, I'm not saying that one was any better than the other. I'm just saying that people put their lives on the line, their futures. Children went to jail. People were lynched. 2.5 Black men, a Black man every 2.5 days, because of the struggle for the liberation that initiated within the Black community with support. And if you look at the march from Selma to Montgomery, there were 3 marches. The most famous one is when John Lewis was beaten unconscious and injured by the Dallas County Police Department, who deputized 400 Ku Klux Klansmen to assist them in, preventing the march from Selma to Montgomery for voting rights. The 3rd march was successful because from several hundred people, it grew to 54,000 people, many of them who were white, who were religious, who were other people of color. And the civil rights movement was not a monocultural movement, and it is one that we benefit from today. And I think unions in particular also benefited from the civil rights movement because it led to the establishment of immigration reform. It led to the establishment of OSHA. It led to the establishment of greater human rights campaigns, to the limited reforms we've seen in the criminal justice system. So the civil rights movement spawned many other efforts at social justice and liberation within our country. And the challenge of the civil rights movement is that many people saw Dr. King as the sole leader. There were a lot of unnamed women and working class people in the background that were responsible for the gains of the civil rights movement. And if you look at, I'll say this and then I'll conclude. If you look at the last year of Martin Luther King's life, on April 4th, 1967, he gave a significant speech that many people have never read. It was at Riverside Church in New York City, where he came out and spoke against the war in Vietnam. And that was the anniversary of 1 year prior to his death on April 4th, 1968. And in that year, Martin Luther King could not get a book published, was not invited to give speeches, could not write an op-ed piece in newspapers, was not hired to attend any of the national gatherings or dinners or legislative or public policy functions, and was basically ignored and isolated. And even Black leadership, Ralph Bunche in the UN, Whitney Young, the president of the National Urban League, Roy Wilkins, the president of the National NAACP, attacked Dr. Young and said he should stick to a domestic agenda and not meddle in international affairs, which was, a travesty of logic. How can you be in one country that is perpetuating death and harm and poison around the planet and not want to have a voice in trying to correct that? So the real Dr. King, he might have been a soldier in the war on poverty, but he was a general in the fight for liberation. So people really need to understand, investigate, research, and examine and share who the real Dr. Martin Luther King was and what his contribution to humanity really amounted to.
Great comments, Yusuf. Thank you for setting the stage for the conversation. I think Carrie Jo is here now. Carrie, are you there?
I am here. And
good to see you, my friend. How are you?
I'm good. Hi. I will be leaving, but I'm leaving everyone in your great hands. I've got a really great bunch of people for you today. You're going to enjoy hearing from them. And I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity always, Mr. McFarlane and Yusuf. Always blessed to see you and learn from you. But there's a lot going on, and they're going to fill you in more.
Well, I want you to set it up before you leave, how we came up with today's panel. You and I talked on the phone last week, and we talked about some things that might be happening on Martin Luther King Day coming out of organized labor. But we thought it was also a good occasion to just review elements of the power, the value, the benefit of being part of organized labor, of unions. Among the things we wanted to discuss were things like, how the things we don't talk enough about, and that is pensions. If you've had the fortune to be in a secure working environment over a career and retire, there are benefits you get that we had traditionally been excluded from, that unions assure. And the question is, what's the connection between that and Martin Luther King Jr.? And I also wanted to ask you and your colleagues and friends if there are any particular union events or actions coming up that you want to talk about, share, promote on this program. Two other general questions. I want to get your sense, all the panelists, your guests, your sense of are Black and brown people in unions? Are we joining? Are unions inviting and encouraging membership by and for the Black community and brown community? And if that is happening, how does it look? And then finally, how are all of you impacted, as everybody else is, by working at home, COVID-19? So those are general things, but I'm going to ask you, Carrie, to introduce all the people on the panel.
Okay, right on. And the first one is the reason why I'm an activist. It's the Poor People's Campaign. And that's what we were talking about. And that's education, housing, and jobs. And that's where labor really comes in. And so we have Sean Layden, and he is the president of the MFT 59 ESP chapter. And he's been doing awesome work in getting them together and getting them ready to fight back, because ESPs are not well paid. And we have Dr. Samita Hill.
I'm sorry, Carrie Jo,
Yeah.
can you explain what ESPs are for members of our audience who might not be familiar?
Yep, they're education. I just said it yesterday. Education
specialists?
Support professionals.
Thank you.
Paris. I'm like, oh, I did it yesterday. And then we've got Dr. Samita Hill from AFSCME, and she's been doing great work over there as well. And you know, I think, Mr. McFarlane, that it's better that they tell you what they're doing, because everybody is doing a lot. Everybody on this panel, they do more than one thing. And I think that's very important for people to know from labor, that we all do more than one thing. We support more than one thing. And they have different areas where they are. So if I could just, you know, take myself out and put them in, increase them, I think it would be more beneficial. Yeah.
That's great. Then let's go with Sean Laban first. And Sean, welcome. Good afternoon. Just take a few minutes and say what's on your mind. Introduce yourself and your work. And what do you kind of want to tell friends and people that don't know you about the moment we're in right now, and how we should be thinking and moving and acting to create and build community?
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. Thanks, Carrie Jo. Thanks, Mr. McFarlane, for having us. My name's Sean Layden. I'm a classroom assistant in the Minneapolis Public Schools. Our union represents about 1,200 education support professionals, and we're non-licensed folks who do everything from small group classroom assistants, leading literacy groups, numeracy groups, providing for social and emotional support for our students, translators, family liaisons, transportation, you name it. We like to say we make school happen. And when you have a school district of about 30,000 students, and we're providing a lot of various important services and supports for our students, our members' work is essential. And we know that because during the pandemic, it was our members who were required to be on site, providing support for the children of first responders and healthcare workers when schools were in remote learning, but we needed to have on-site options. And what we've seen historically in the school district is that our hourly employees are oftentimes paid poverty wages. And so we have a march and rally coming up on Monday at 2 p.m. at the Hennepin County Government Plaza. We'll be meeting up with other labor unions and community partners, calling on the Minneapolis Public Schools elected leadership to direct their administration to equitably distribute new resources to our workers in our schools that are coming from the state of Minnesota. A lot of elected officials and folks were celebrating what they were calling and characterizing as record increases in school funding in the last legislative session. And now it's time for hourly employees who oftentimes, like in our union, are majority Black, Brown, Indigenous employees to benefit from that. Because right now, if you're a special ed assistant getting hired in the Minneapolis Public Schools, you're going to start at $24,000 a year. And whether it's teachers, administrators, families, or parents, they'll tell us, we can't do it without you. And paying folks that kind of wage to do such essential work is shameful. And that's what we're going to be calling out and taking action to correct. Now is the time.
Are your members frequently referred to as EAs or TAs? Is that another term for support staff? Yeah,
paras, EAs, TAs. Yep, that's right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and Brenda Johnson is here. She's one of our longtime career ESP, and Brenda can speak a little bit more to the work that she's been doing over the decades in the Minneapolis Public Schools to make sure our schools are what they need to be for everybody.
Brenda, welcome. Go ahead and introduce yourself and talk about your work and your passion.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McFarlane, and we go back a long time. And it is also Reverend Brenda Johnson. I am an ordained clergy in the African Methodist Episcopal Church, and I'm also a longtime education support professional in Minneapolis Public Schools. My current position, I am considered a school success program assistant. So I work with families. I work with our families right now, incarcerated youth. I work to support students who are in our jail, okay? And so I'll call those our visiting babies. And so part of my job has been to make sure that when students are in our facility, that you get to go to school, okay? It's that you have to go to school, right? So one of the things as educators, we want to make sure that no matter what, that they're getting what they need before they are either sentenced or going to out-of-home placement. Yes, I love my job, but time is up now for the playing, and I'll say in the great words of Clyde Bellacore, the thunder before the storm. So the thunder has come, and it's time for us as teachers and educational support professionals to really let people know that we're time out for the playing, that we deserve the respect that is deserved. We are the frontline people. We go to work every single day, from media specialists to sign language interpreters. There's a gamut. And so we're here and we are rallying on Monday, and we need you all to join in the fight with us, okay? And so we have our partners, we have ASME, SEIU, Minneapolis Regional Labor Federation, St. Paul Public Schools, and on and on and on. And so part of my job as a school success program assistant is to make sure also is that there's some kind of wraparound service where the community is coming in, where the community comes in and provides support to our kids. So over my tenure at the jail, we've done many things. We've had the school to prison pipeline, which I was on board in writing the paper for the national school to prison pipeline. We had visitors and we had the Blackest visit our facility to really understand what education looks like in a short-term secured facility. And yep, we're winning. We're winning, and we're winning because no matter what, our kids are still graduating. Okay. And I could go on and on and on. And so, yeah, I love my work and I'm on the front line, my heart, my body, and my soul. Nope. Yep. I'm a teacher because I'm a mother. Right. And yep, they're grown now, but I still have other babies that come through our system. And so there's no judgment there. But what our job is to make sure that our kids are educated. And whatever their next opportunity will be in or out of the system, it is our responsibility to make sure that they have the tools that they need when they get out.
Brenda, you may have worked with a gentleman by the name of Ohidaway Janey.
Yes.
In the Minneapolis school system.
Yes. Ohidaway was a good friend, and I loved him dearly. He was before my time, so I was not there yet. But I was there at his wedding, and I just loved Ohidaway. He fought for.
We were both there. He was my brother.
Yes, I know that. I know that, and I had a lot of love and a lot of respect. So as we're on the front line and we put our bodies and our minds and our souls out there on Monday, we ask that you guys come and join us in the fight in the Minnesota, because where the world is watching Minnesota, everybody is watching where Minnesota goes, whether that's education, it's across the board.
And you're doing God's work full time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I am. I just finished a 3-year stint on the NEA board, the National Education Board.
Wow.
And our leader will be here. One of our leaders, Becky Pringle, is one of our keynote speakers. She will be here to kick us off. We have many community members, right, Sean, that are coming. We have people that are in labor that are coming to support us and to give us a word of encouragement.
Thank you.
Yes.
Reverend Johnson, you invoked the name of the thunder before the storm. And absolutely. I want you to elaborate on that, because somebody might not know what you're referring to. But other names that are top of mind right now, a friend and colleague of ours in the industry also passed from COVID, and that's Mel Reeves, who was a columnist and activist. And so if you want to, or if anybody else on the panel would like to, make reference to the work, the spirit, the mission, and the accomplishments of either Clyde Belcourt or Mel Reeves, or even our friend Bill Cotman, one of the cultural voices. So we've lost some, and everybody is having this experience where we're looking at and reviewing who in our life has transitioned to ancestorship. But you brought the name up, and it invited me to ask you to say more about
Absolutely. So
Clyde Belcourt and others.
I'm really not that old yet, but I'm kind of old. I'm getting there, right? So I'm seasoned. I think that I am seasoned now. I'm a seasoned saint. And so as I was on the front line in many avenues as we fought as a freedom fighter, right? Descendant of the slaves. Some of those things of the great Clyde Belcourt, he was a freedom fighter. So he fought for economic justice across the board. He was Native American, but he fought. He had his body on the line. So that is one of his statements and phrases that he coined that phrase, right? The thunder before the storm, right? And Mel Reeves, freedom fighter, on the line with all of us as we fought last year and the year before. George Floyd, one of the things he would say as we were gathering, he would say, listen. And what that meant is that he would want us to listen to the next speaker that was up so we could take our rightful places and march forward. And then as we think about some of the others that have gone on, we're going to keep their fight alive. So you will hear me say, listen, and you will hear me talk about the thunder before the storm. Okay.
And that was Clyde Belcourt's Anishinaabe name. His name translated meant the thunder before the storm. A wonderful and powerful person. Yusef, go ahead.
No. I was just going to say that I had the pleasure and the privilege of working with both Clyde and Mel, and it's going to create a tremendous vacuum in our community. But to Reverend Johnson, I'm 73 years old, and I consider myself an elder in training. But to the young people who are participating in this broadcast this afternoon, I would simply say, it ain't what you got, it's how you use it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Wisdom. Let me bring in Dr. Shanetta Hill, Vice President of Local 34, and ask you, Doctor, to introduce the rest of your team and have the three of you that I see here, I think it's three of you, with the local, talk about your work, your vision, your priorities, and what's on your mind, what's in your heart right now. Good afternoon. Good to see you.
Hi, thank you for having us. I'm Dr. Samita Hill, VP of Local 34. I work for Hennepin County. I've been there for 17 years. Work as a caddy waiver case manager in the community. I do work with as a marriage and family therapist, specialize in working with African American couples or those in relationship with us, because I truly believe that due to the implementation and process of slavery, we have underdeveloped relational skills, love relational skills. Those that are with me today are Yunuen Avila. She is our MAT coordinator who coordinates all of our MAT leaders, and we do actions together, and which they will also introduce themselves, and we do an array of many other things that we're involved in, like the Anti-Discrimination Committee, to ensure that our protected classes have a voice and have a place that they can go if they feel not supported in the workplace as well as in the union, to be able to voice their opinions. And then there's Ranisha Buckner, who is our Sergeant of Arms, who is also a part of MAT and Anti-Discrimination Committee. And during, what I want to say is that our ASME 34 is very active in the community. And during the unrest and the protests due to the murder of George Floyd, we were out on the streets. We donated money to Pillsbury for the land acquisition, to put money aside for Black businesses to be able to have essential businesses, because one of the issues is that he came in with fake money to get essential things like bread or food. And when I have been in the store of one of my other brother siblings, I want to be respectful of gender, but other siblings that are African descent, Hispanic, Latin, Somalian community, if I went into one of their stores and I didn't have enough money, or I didn't have any money at all, they had the leniency to be able to give me food if they wanted to. And that's one of the things that is lacking in our community as African Americans, is that we don't have essential businesses. And during the pandemic, that is something that is essential for economic equality. And so today we're here to talk about some of the issues that we're having in the county around economic equality, the frontline workers not getting what they need as far as income for going out and taking risks to make sure that the community is safe and taken care of, because during the pandemic, services did not, there were no breaks in services. People still had housing. People were still getting food support. Also to talk about reimbursement, because a lot of the cost is being shifted to the workers, because a lot of Hennepin County has decided to move most of the workers to home and do remote work. And then just in some of our social worker and nursing classes, the public health nurses, there is a pay disparity that is very great, and we do the same work. So I'm gonna leave the floor and ask Yunua and Ranisha to speak to the things that we're here to share today as well.
Really quick, I just want to say, just because I have to speak up, my name's Brianna.
I'm sorry.
They forgot to mention me, and so
I'm
I just
sorry.
have to put that out there that I'm also a member of Local 34 and I am present.
Thank you,
I truly
Brianna.
apologize. I didn't see Brianna in the middle. I thought that was just like, I truly apologize. Brianna is also a part of the Anti-Discrimination Committee and has been very pivotal in the table team and negotiations and helping to move our movements forward and looking at racial issues and bring up ways that we can do things better. That's one of the things that I really appreciate about Brianna and what she brings, as well as her voice in how we can be equitable across all racial populations.
So, Doctor, why don't you sort of co-pilot with me here and bring your colleagues on one by one so that they can bring their voices and their concerns to the conversation.
Okay. So if we could just start with you and then Brianna and Ranisha, that would be fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi there, everybody. My name is Yunuen Avila. I appreciate the opportunity to be on here with you all. Thank you, Dr. Hill, for your great explanation there of what's happening and what's going on within Hennepin County, within our AFSCME Local 34, even combined with our sister local 2022. So like I said, my name is Yunuen Avila. I am the Member Action Team Coordinator, or we say MAT for short. So you probably see Matt right behind me. What we do as MAD is that what MAD is, just for the folks that don't know what that is, it's a network within our local for communicating, organizing, and mobilizing our members. So that's what kind of Dr. Hill brushed up on. Right now, we've been working very diligently since we started negotiations. We've been phone banking, calling our members to check in on them, also seeing where they stand, and that it's a way to to keep us connected and to keep us one, especially now that the majority of us are working remotely. So we feel kind of that disconnect. And it's just a great way to just continue to check in on our members. We have a little over about 2,500 folks in our local, and that's we're one of the largest locals within our within Hennepin County. So it's a lot of work, and that's why we utilize MAD in order to be able to contact what we call our 5 to 10 folks and stay communicated with them and keep them in the loop of what's happening within our local, within our communities, just within the whole environment. As I said, most of us are working remotely, and it's just a way to stay connected. So that is the introduction that I have for myself. I mean, we can later elaborate on more points, on talking points, but I can pass it on to, I believe it was it Ranisha or Brianne? Dr. Hill? Brianne? Okay, go ahead, Brianne. Thank you for your time, everybody.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. McFarlane and all the panelists. It's good to see everyone this afternoon. If you can't tell, I am an outspoken one, and that's what I really like to bring to the union work that we do at Hennepin County. I am a financial case aide. I work in adult protection. So oftentimes I'm there helping. I'm the only one who does the work that I do in our county. So when we get vulnerable adult reports, I'm there connecting our residents to the services they need in order to thrive, whether it's persons with disabilities or whether they're in their elder years. What I do also is I work with a lot of diversity and inclusion work within the county. I've led our largest diversity group, I would say, in the county, which is our Project Diversity. I did that for 18 months. And we had a lot of really great progress moving forward, expanding and reaching into some of the other departments. And I've put a lot of that work into our ADC. I'm very focused on disparities reduction and anti-discrimination work. And we really revved it up by challenging the county after the murder of George Floyd, when it came down to how do we look at bereavement? How do we look at cultural nuance when we allow people to get off, and really working with our membership to help them try to figure out cultural specific language, because for African Americans, Africans, one of the things we have is, and you see it in the Native community, is collective grieving. When you lose someone like George Floyd, regardless of the person's background, in such a way, in such a violent public way, the community feels it. And that's one thing I feel like very linear axology does not account for. And so that was one of the fights we put into this particular contract, is how do we expand bereavement leave, and how do we allow it to have cultural relevance? And I continue to push for anything that's very culture specific to all of our BIPOC members at the county. But I think that also goes to show that it expands more. And since we have talked a bit about Martin Luther King, it makes me think of a quote that he said, is that whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. This is interrelated structure of reality. And I think it's really critical, because if the people of color at the county and our Caucasian brothers and sisters at the county are not getting what they need and are not feeling supported and are dealing with pay inequity, we can't really serve the residents the way they deserve to be served. Because if we're not taken care of and we're stressed, that comes out onto the residents we serve, which impacts the greater county and then the greater metro area as a whole. So with that said, I will pass it off to Renisha, my sister in the union.
Thank you for that, Breon. My name is Ranisha Buckner, and I am AFSCME Local 34, Sergeant at Arms. I also am co-chair of the Anti-Discrimination Committee, and I'm also a member of the MAC team as well as the MAC committee, as well, to work on getting information out to our people in order to, I'm sorry, you guys, I'm a little nervous. Getting information out to our people so they can know what's going on in our union, so they're not in the dark about what the county is doing, and to us. I am excited to be here. I'm here basically to bring the light to the situation about how the cost increases for some of our members who didn't have internet at home or had low costing, efficient internet, efficient for just the kids at home, and now we are paying triple or quadruple that amount in order to do the jobs with no compensation whatsoever from the county, and then they throw us crumbs in order to, and say that should be enough for what's going on. So I'm excited to. I think that's all. That's all what I was supposed to talk about, right, Dr. Hill?
You did a good job, honey. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So this is an open conversation. It's unscripted. It's unplanned in the sense that nobody has parts, and we really want to talk and just share. So the idea is to relax and take a moment to tell your truth, to say what's on your mind, and to criticize, analyze, to praise, to do whatever you feel is appropriate for the moment. I want to introduce one of my friends who's a regular on this program, Brother Kamal King. Kamal King is joining us from Atlanta. Kamal, how you doing, man?
You're on mute, brother.
Okay, I'm doing fine. Thank you. Thank you, Al. And it's been interesting to listen to these union people. My mother was a union organizer. She organized the International Ladies Garment Workers Union in Kansas City, Missouri. And so I grew up in a union household, you know, reading union materials. And so I'm a union person, and I never could understand why people would be against unions. I'm currently reading Martin Luther King's Letter from a Birmingham Jail. And the type of issues that he was addressing in that book still face us today. And the quotes that you gave about, you know, you can't be all you can be unless other people are what they are. You know, you can't hold a man down without being down with him. Those things are just jumping out at me, but I'm interested in what you're saying, and I'm listening. I'm all ears today. So thank you, Al.
Well, thank you for being here, and jump in with questions or comments or observations. You know, Kamal is a lawyer, a retired lawyer in Atlanta. He and I are friends from childhood. We were in school together from third grade on, and another member of this panel who's not here today is another cousin of mine, Burnell Powell. But Burnell and Kamal were the two attorneys in our neighborhood circle, our grade school circle. So I'm always glad to have Kamal here and to have his insight, his viewpoint, his vision, and wisdom in these conversations. So let me go back around, and if you have more to say or something you didn't say the first time, let's give each of us a time to reflect on what has been said and what else needs to be said. Let's go back to Brother Lubin first.
Yeah, thanks. I think just listening to other union members talking about this, it makes me think of the African proverb that we've been talking a lot about in our union as we're gearing up in our contract fight, that if you want to go fast, you go alone, but if you want to go far, you go together. And I think that's really the underpinnings of our labor movement, is when we collectively act together, we're going to get more that we need. And working people have never been on the top of the hill in this country. And so we've got to get together and use the collective power that we can. And I'm very excited again. We're in a historic moment right now. To hear the folks at the county talk about not getting compensation for having to do their work at home to do internet. The federal government sent the county, the school district, state of Minnesota, hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars nationally. And that's another issue that is really getting folks upset in our schools, is how those federal dollars are being used to mitigate the problems around COVID-19. We've been very active in the conversation around the school district, saying those dollars need to be spent first and foremost to address mitigation concerns if we're going to be in-person learning, and second, need to be spent as close to our students as possible. And when we hear plans around bringing on additional consultants, data scientists, those things are unacceptable, and sounds like a similar situation with the county. So those just a couple of reflections I've got.
Sean, I mispronounced your name. Apologies. Sean Layden. Is that the proper pronunciation?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, great. So let's go back to Reverend Brenda Johnson. The next, reflections, thoughts, information you want to share. And I'm asking each of you to come from the passion of the moment. What must be said, what must be articulated right now. Pastor Johnson, or Reverend Johnson.
Yes, thank you again, Brother Al McFarlane. One of the things in terms of the passion that I exist in and coexist in is that we oftentimes talk about there is not enough people of color, teachers and support professionals that reflect the student body makeup in the Minneapolis public schools. So we're in a fight. We are in a fight in many ways. For one, our students are at the bottom of the barrel in all areas of academics in the state of Minnesota. How do we change that? How do we change the narrative? Well, I have a plethora of educators in my families, past and present. A lot of our young people now, it is not inviting to come and to be a teacher or to be an educational support professional. So my cry is that how do we make this profession so respected that we have people knocking at the door to once again want to become an educator? And so we're not only going to be talking about the academic teaching staff, but the support that wraps around the child holistically. So we're in a fight of our life. So my cry is that we need more trained, skilled Black and brown people in the classrooms that look like the student body makeup in some of our buildings across the state of Minnesota. And when we talk about greater Minnesota, there are Black and brown students there, and most of their counterparts, there's not a lot of people that look like us. So I know at the state level, Education Minnesota, they're in a fight to try to recruit. How do we do that? Recruit educators of color. And so one of my things, and I'll say this and then I'll let it go. My life is to continuously interrupt the school to prison pipeline.
Kamal, let me ask you this. Minneapolis and St. Paul both have the same set of problems of disparate outcomes, poor outcomes for Black and brown students. And, you know, for us, it's kind of part of the environment, the ecosystem that consistently reveals disparities in all areas of life: economics, home ownership, wealth, advancement in corporate environments, but education. And you would think that education would be a place where we would be excelling and leading the charge for change. Well, Minnesota fares poorly in education outcomes for Black and brown students. And so you wonder, is it a question of white supremacist structures and institutions that fortify that disadvantage? And I raise the question to you, Kamal, because Atlanta is a Black city. And so what is the experience? What is the story? And you might not be able to answer this. It might not be your field, but impressions. Where Blacks are in the majority, run the city council, I presume, run the Board of Education, are the outcomes different? Are they better?
They're getting better. They're getting better, but we still have some of the same issues that you guys have enunciated there. One of the bedrock problems that I see, and Yusef, you may be able to expound on this, as long as education is funded through real estate taxes, you know, it puts Blacks at a disadvantage. You know, our real estate is not valued as high, so we don't have as, you know, even if they tax us higher, we don't have the type of money to put into the system, into our education system. And I think that that's one of the major problems with funding education.
Yusef, you've been in the education industry for years. What's the story about Minneapolis and St. Paul in general, from your point of view?
Well, my wife and I both retired from the public school system in St. Paul. Our daughter is a product of that system, and she has 3 degrees and is working on her PhD. She works in children's mental health for Ramsey County, which is the city of St. Paul is one of the 19 cities in Ramsey County. She also has her own private therapy practice. So some students, Baldwin has a quote, which I use as a signature on my email, that says, "Millions of Black boys and girls seek desperately for a place to stand. And the wonder is not that so many are ruined, but that so many survive." Because if I can piggyback on what Brenda said, we not only need Black educators, we need highly qualified Black educators in the classroom, because the other side of the coin is teacher preparation. And as long as majority white institutions who have no investment, no relationship, no connection, no recruitment, no pipeline with communities of color are defining the criteria for licensing our educators, we're going to get people, the only thing they ever learned about the Black community was how to stay out of it, okay? And the way you see people is the way you treat them. And the way you treat them is who they become. So if you're in a classroom or in a government supervisory position, and before you are a host of not just people of color, but low-income whites, and you have these stereotypical negative images and beliefs, you know, kids or students, I should say, rather than kids, have a nasty habit of exceeding whatever expectations are imposed on them. That's no different for employees, all right? And if they're in an environment of love and high expectations, and the teachers are adequately prepared, those students will exceed those expectations by doing more than their teachers believe they're capable of. And in contrast, if the students, and you union folks know, if the employees are in an environment that is not healthy emotionally, physically, financially, you know, politically, those students and those employees will exceed the expectations by doing less than the supervisor or the teacher thinks they're capable of doing. And that's just human nature, okay? In an environment of love and high expectation, the kids thrive and excel. And if they're in an environment absent that, and absent adequate education and preparation on the part of the teacher or the supervisor or the administrator, you know, you're lost. You're in a wasteland, okay? And I've been in those environments in nonprofits and in government, and they were not healthy environments because the expectations were so low that people assumed you couldn't do nothing. They believed you weren't going anywhere. And so your job description, your performance review, your hopes for the future, your chances for promotion were bleak and dim on a good day, okay? And on the worst days, you couldn't stomach it. And it stresses you out physically, it stresses you out intellectually, emotionally, and a lot of employees have to try very hard not to bring that home, you know, because going to work is like going into enemy territory. And Martin Luther King said that anybody can be a leader because anybody can be of service to the community. And when you speak out in those communities, when you demand equity and inclusion and that the right thing be done, you can pay a great penalty for that, as our host, Al McFarlane, knows from his personal career experience. So when our children went to school the first day, my wife and I would go with. We would meet with every one of their teachers and say, look, here's our business card, okay? Here's our home phone number. Here's our work phone number. Here's our cell phone number. We don't want to have to wait until Valentine's Day to find out that they missed an assignment or acted out in class, all right? We want to be notified immediately. We go through that backpack every night. We double check that homework. And if it's messy, we make them erase it or give them a clean sheet of paper and do it over again. We have very high expectations for our children, and we want you to call on them whether they raise their hand or not. And we'll be at the front of the line on parent-teacher night, and we're not going to do 3 minutes at the table with you. We're going to come with a list of prepared questions, and we want to see the answers and the evidence, okay? Amazingly, we never had any problems, okay? Because we convinced our children's teachers that if there was a problem, they were going to be in it, okay? Because we were not, we pounded lawn signs and campaigned and gave money to school board candidates. We knew the superintendent. We knew the members of the Board of Education, and we knew how to raise our voice and give both sides of our property tax dollar and the edges, okay? And I think more parents have to learn, and it's not something that comes magically, how to advocate on behalf of their children and that we need to educate and demand, highly qualified teachers. I don't care what color they are. I want them highly qualified. I want the best teachers possible in front of my children, in front of all of our children. Okay. And the rub is that children ought to be able to get a world-class education without regard to which school that they go to.
Mhm.
And we all know there are schools that everybody avoids. When we held the parent fair for parents to learn about school choice and what was available in each building, there were pregnant white women who were coming to the parent fair to begin their research on where their child was going to go to school in 5 years. Okay. And you could count the number of Black people at the parent fair on your hand. All right. And so when the school buses started running through the community, people said, hey, we better go to the Student Placement Center, which is what they called the outfit in Minneapolis and St. Paul, where you went to sign your kids up for school. And guess what? All the best schools were already full. And the only schools that were available were the ones that nobody wanted, were the ones where all of the teachers were involuntarily transferred who couldn't get a job anywhere else. Okay. So we need to educate parents. We need to hold teachers and administrators accountable. And we need to be right there with our babies when they go to school, demonstrating that we have high expectations and demanding that their teachers meet those expectations. So it's a two-way street. Okay.
Mhm.
We want the best, but we got to bring some to get some. Okay. And that's our responsibility as parents, as grandparents, okay, as neighbors, for all of our children. Because if that doesn't exist, if there's no love and high expectations in that environment, that's where that school to prison pipeline begins. And believe me,
Let me ask Dr. Hill to jump in here. Dr. Hill, jump in and just sort of capture the reflection of the spirit of that content, of that comment, marvelous comment, in the work that you do for Local 34, because what I'm hearing is a clear need to create expectations and action and accountability and responsibility for us to be the source of, the motivation for, and the object of change in our own interest. How does that play into your work as a union organizer?
Well, for us, when I just want to speak in two separate arenas. In the community, I think that's what we're looking at is we're interdependent. And so all other groups have allies outside of the United States. Foundational African Americans do not. And so therefore, what I saw during the unrest was all people across the nation and internationally coming together to stand for inequality and saying we're tired, we're done, we're not going to keep accepting this poor treatment. We're not going to keep accepting low wages, unsafe work environments, lack of education for our children, poor health system, all these things that we saw nationally and internationally. And one of the things that was most powerful to me in our community is when we had a rally and the Native Americans came out, which I've never seen before, to stand in solidarity and sage before the decision, the verdict. And so that was powerful and emotional for me because it said, you saw BIPOC, you saw white people, you saw all of us standing together and internationally to say no more. We're tired. We're done. Hope deferred is now, we can't be as peaceful because we need to make moves to say that we need something different. And I think in our educational system, our children are way smarter than we are, and they have access to social media and information that we didn't have. We were really isolated and in silos, and so we didn't know what was going on. And so I think in the education system, the teachers, like Dr. Youssef said, need to be excellent and great at what they do. We need top of the line. And if they're not, then we need mentors for those because it is a field that doesn't have enough. And I also think in thinking about other groups of people that African Americans, we need to reintroduce trades at a younger stage, maybe in elementary, junior high, high school, because again, we need to be able to feed our families. College teaches you how to work for other people. Trades teaches you how to make money for yourself. So if I cannot work a job, I can go cut somebody's lawn and put food on the table. And so I think I can do mechanic work. I can be an electrician. So I think those things need to be brought back into the school system. And when it comes to Hennepin County and we're looking at equity and balance in the workplace, we're looking at a 2.5% GSA, general salary adjustment. I think that's what it is, for us to be appreciative of. And inflation is going up by 5.5 to 7% on average. There's no way we can keep up. Many of our workers are on assistance. They're receiving SNAP benefits, healthcare benefits, housing. They're on Section 8. Not everyone is doing well. And those of us that have college degrees, our student loan payments are so astronomical, and they find ways for us not to be able to get the loan forgiveness. Some of our loan payments are like $1,500 or more. They're higher than a mortgage payment. So what Hennepin County is offering as far as the GSA is not equitable. It is not going to help us keep up with what we need to maintain in our livelihood. Also, the hazard pay, we have a lot of people that not only were told they had to go on the front lines, but volunteered during the highest time when we didn't know what this virus was. And so therefore, there was money set aside that Hennepin County has not used that they could use right now to incentivize those that put their lives at risk for us. For me, I don't go out into the community that often, so my risk is minimal, but others were out every day. We maintain the community, we maintain safety, we maintain that people weren't hospitalized, those that have PCA and homemakers so that they're not in nursing facilities. All of those things were maintained during the pandemic. The reimbursement costs, they don't want to give us but a small stipend. Many people, they are not able to, some people didn't have internet. Some had to increase their internet to business class because the internet is so unstable now that so many people are working from home. So for me, myself, I use my personal internet. If that doesn't work, I use the community internet. And if that doesn't work and I still have to get work done, I'm using a hotspot. But a hotspot is very expensive and the county provides that. But at some point, if we're all on that hotspot, they're going to want to discontinue the usage of that. And so they need to give us a reimbursement to be able to afford this increase that we're taking on. And lastly, I'd like to say that that we have an inequity in pay around public health nurses and social workers. And a lot of us do the same work. And some nurses and social workers do the same work. They're not working down. They're working in a job where we do the same thing and they're getting paid almost $10,000 more. And so we want to be paid the same. And so those are our major issues.
What's the basis for the pay discrepancy?
Well, I truly believe nurses, social workers, and psychologists were the first in the field. And Hennepin County hasn't evolved from that. Now we have many different fields of study that do the same work. You have marriage and family therapists, LPCC, you have social workers, you have LADCs. We're all able to do some of the same work, but because the job class hasn't changed and they were the first in the field, that's why they get paid more. Hennepin County would say it's something different, but I think it has a historical context, not necessarily that because in some areas, like I worked in Cope Crisis, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. A psychologist who's not licensed, who gets paid $10,000 more than I do, is not able to sign off on work. They have to come to me to get it signed off, but they're getting paid $10,000 more. We have this issue in other areas. That makes no sense. I should be getting paid the same, or they should be getting paid less. But because they were the first in the field, and the first to be in the community to manage and maintain civility, that is why I think we have that issue.
Where is the resistance to the demands being made by the union on behalf of its membership? Is it simply at management level, or is it at the commissioner level? Is the resistance presented as some kind of accountability or responsibility for fiscal, management? What are you hearing? And why is it so difficult for the value proposition that you are and that you mean to be fairly acknowledged and compensated.
Brianna, may you speak to that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's kind of coming from all levels. I mean, one of the things that we can point to is Commissioner Green and her, I'll say her garbage replies back, where she's talking about inflation, where like the county sits as far as we're ahead of, inflation, and these are where wages are, but yet they don't have an explanation. I believe when we were in negotiations prior to the confidential part, we'll speak to earlier, where it was talked about, well, education, well, public health nurses education, but then they don't realize that some departments like adult protection, for example, where there is not pay equity between the protection classes like child protection and adult protection, but the social workers do the same work. Adult protection social workers have to have a master's degree, and they have to maintain a lot of things that are expensive. And it's the same if you think about those who are clinical social workers who have master's degrees who are also assessors, and they're not getting paid the same. And the argument comes, well, this is how the county pays. We match the inflation. We're above inflation. You're 100% of this market rate thing. But it doesn't mean anything to workers who are stagnant. It doesn't mean anything when you look at the 7 county districts and you're starting to look at the workers who do the same work between public health nurses and social workers, and there either is no gap or there's a difference of $1,000 either in favor of public health nurses or in favor of social workers. But at the county, there's like $10,000+ difference. But you also have all these catch-all positions. Like I'm a financial case aide, and we have people who do this work who are doing work that admin assistants do. We have people who are doing the work of supervisors and doing trainings. We have people who are doing the same work as our human service representatives, where they're processing long-term care applications, but yet they're getting paid thousands of dollars less. And the only thing is well, the financial case aides are at that 100% or above market rate adjustment, so therefore they don't deserve anything. But one of the things I would argue is, well, you have workers doing the same work of other positions making thousands of dollars less. You want to quote Ramsey County, but Ramsey County has a 3-tiered system for case aides. Their highest case aide position makes $10,000 higher than what my top is as a financial case aide. So if we're going to do these comparisons, I think we need to be honest. And that's one of the things that from the commissioner level, at least I can say with what I've seen from Commissioner Green, that she hasn't been honest about that. But yet everyone continues to do this research like, well, look at Ramsey County. If you're going to keep comparing us to Ramsey County and saying, well, they're going to accept 2.25 or 2.5 or something GSA, but they're also wanting to accept higher, I can't, Dr. Hill, can you correct me? It's that
We're about out of time.
$1,000.
We've got about a couple of minutes more before we close the show.
Can I have a question, Mr. McFarlane? If before we close out, if Sean Layden can just do a little wrap up in terms of our ask, what's happening for us, Minneapolis Public Schools and educational support professionals on Monday in terms of our ask and where we are in terms of mediation.
Absolutely.
And then can we just, I don't mean to cut you off, Brianna, then can and you just do our ask really quick so that
we can do both. Absolutely.
Thank you.
And let me tell you that I'm so glad to have this conversation with you. I admire the clarity, the competence, and the courage that you're bringing into this conversation. I think it's important for our communities. And as you do the summation, also tell what you want your neighbors, our neighbors, the citizens to do to support your position. So go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, thanks. So I think, as Brenda was saying, Monday we have an action. We are in contract negotiations right now. We've made a ambitious proposal to the district saying that we need living wages for our hourly employees. And so we can't have folks making $24,000 a year before taxes and paying health insurance to do some of our most essential work in our schools. And so we've got to raise those starting wages to $35,000 for our folks. And to support that effort, we're asking folks to come out on Monday, again, 2 p.m. at Hennepin County Government Plaza, but also to reach out to our elected school board members. Our elected officials are the ultimate deciders in this. And their superintendent or county administrator, whoever it is, they don't make the choice, the elected officials do. So if folks can reach out and say, you got to fix what's going on with hourly employees in the Minneapolis public schools. And just as a quick example, in our last round of negotiations, we were told we were being asked to move to what the district was calling an equitable health insurance plan. And I'll give you an example of what that means. One of our members making $24,000 a year under what the district considers an equitable health insurance plan pays the exact same amount of money as an administrator making $140,000 a year in our district. That is how upside down the decision making is. And again, as Brendan's talked to our ESPs, our food service workers, our bus drivers, our majority members of color, unions, and our communities and our students see how our district is treating our hourly employees, and it sends a very clear message about how credible and how serious about equity we are at MPS. And so this is something that our leaders can fix, and they can make a choice. And we're asking folks in the public to really press them on that choice. Hourly workers have to be a priority, because those openings and that high turnover means that students who need academic supports, who have individual education plans and need special education services, people who need translation services, all of those essential functions. When we say, how do we raise outcomes for students, we know we need this work to be done, and we know it needs to be done by qualified and high quality folks. And what we know right now, hundreds of vacancies, high turnover, that's not going to get us what we need to turn around outcomes in Minneapolis.
Thank you, Sean. Who's going to make the case for the work at the county?
Yep, I can jump in. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm Latina, so I'll speak really fast. We have an upcoming union info picket. It is on Wednesday, January 19th, anytime between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. at the South Minneapolis Hub, which is the old one of the county offices where folks applied for benefits such as SNAP, cash, and healthcare. It is on 2215 East Lake Street, Minneapolis. You can come as long or as little as you can. And again, this union info picket is to bring awareness, raise awareness for to the community and to Hennepin County, and reminding them that we need racism respect. We need Hennepin County to offer us a contract that respects frontline workers, which they're obviously not. Dr. Hill laid it out really well, and so did Brian. I do want to mention to the community, and I want to say it in Spanish and English, por favor, please. Community, yeah, please, community and union folks, anybody, parents, children, call the county administrator, David Huff. Email them if you don't feel comfortable speaking. Call the 7 district commissioners within Hennepin County. Email them again if you don't feel comfortable, and tell them that we deserve a fair contract that benefits not only us, but also the community. Because if we are not able to show up to work, we cannot serve the community, which is why we are in the profession that we're in. I forgot to mention that I'm a human services representative. So I'm one of the folks that I help folks determine eligibility for food stamps and, healthcare and cash. And if we don't have us working together to do that, we're going to let down the community. So Hennepin County is letting us down. And I wrote 2 things here that I want to say really quickly. A problem doesn't have to affect you specifically to be considered a problem. A problem is a problem. So if you have that problem, so if you see that problem is affecting someone around you, why not be an ally and advocate in solidarity? So I continue to urge, let's continue to organize and speak up, because at the end of the day, my voice isn't as loud, nor does it carry the same weight as the combined and powerful voices of us all. So again, a finger is a finger, but a fist is stronger.
Favor de decirlo en español.
En español. Por favor, a la comunidad, por favor, a todos los latinos que estén escuchando, por favor, llamen a los, yo digo, ¿cómo se dicen? Commissioners, comisionados. Hablen al David Huff, a Jeffrey Lundy, Irene Fernando, Marianne Green, Angela Conley, Debbie Gotel, Chris Latondres, Kevin Anderson. No importa si no hablan español, en inglés, dejen el mensaje en español, manden correo electrónico en español y díganle que nosotros merecemos un contrato bueno que nos va a justificar a nosotros y le va a beneficiar a todos ustedes. So, por favor, háganos ese favor como mi familia, mi raza, mi gente, unidos con solidaridad. So, solidarity. Muchas gracias por su tiempo.
Thank you so much. All right. Well, listen, we're out of time. This is a great way to do the show, to end the show. I thank all of you for being here. I thank you for the work you do. I thank you for being who you are. And I hope and I expect that our community is going to be 100% behind you. We're in this together and we will make change. We are the change. We'll see you next time. I'm Al McFarlane.